welcome back. Before moving to sub-item 5.5 draft report, as indicated earlier, we would just like to have the Secretariat propose the text of recommendation G for 5.1/1. Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is on page 5.3 of the draft report on agenda item 5. So what was previously G is now F because we had merged 2 paragraphs earlier. And it will read, or it is proposed to be read as, develop a performance-based global framework for higher airspace operations considering current and future work in emerging technologies, for example, in the areas of information management and sharing, strategic planning, separation and environmental standards, situational awareness and security, and new paragraph G, ensure that the framework includes flights transitioning through controlled airspace and to or through airspace above flight level 600 as necessary. So I'll repeat the new G. Ensure that the framework includes flights transitioning through controlled airspace and to or through airspace above flight level 600 as necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any objection to the proposed recommendation? Okay, I'm seeing none. Proposed recommendation from the Secretariat is accepted. We now move to agenda item 5.5, other emerging issues impacting the global air navigation system, including unmanned aircraft systems, drones, and supersonic and commercial space operation. We had paragraph 5.40. (5.41) Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to all. I have asked the floor for an intervention, although Greece agrees with the substance of this paragraph. That is correct. Annex 19 is dealing with mature operations. However, the safety management principles shall be respected by those space operators. So, to our point of view, we have to add something relatively. Therefore, we propose to strike out the word however from the first line from the bottom and to start a new sentence by however the safety management principles shall be respected, shall be applied and complied with. That is our proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Greece, I want to draw your attention to paragraph 5.42, which covers the sentiment that you expressed. United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing more to say other than what you just said, so thank you.
Greece.
Yes. Yes, I agree that is referred in paragraph 5.42, but it's better to be clarified in paragraph 5.41 because there is a special reference to Annex 19. That's why it was our intervention.
Thank you, Greece. Is there any support for the change as proposed by Greece? considering paragraph 5.42 as well? United States?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would not be able to support that. We do not feel that a SMS based out of Annex 19 that we would have to comply with would be good for a industry that's still maturing. We in the United States have an SMS that we utilize in all of our commercial space operations. We believe that the countries that are currently operating in the commercial space environment work with SMS, and we would push back against ICAO forcing an SMS under Annex 19 for a still maturing industry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, United States. And as I recall, the 5.41 and 5.42 did reflect this discussion and intentions of the committee. Belgium?
Thank you, Chair. Belgium would like to support the intervention made by Greece. We think that the safety management system should be applied and complied with.
Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We fully support the inputs made by Greece and by just now because we think safety management principles should always be followed, and to make a statement to that, also if you recall our intervention when we introduced the paper where we said not all Annex 19 but the relevant parts or created relevant parts should be applicable for them. I think it's good if we include in 5.41 also a reference to the safety management principles. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps to provide some clarifications specifically about why there are two separate paragraphs. Annex 19 is, of course, aviation-related safety management. There are other safety management aspects to the operations, and as we understood the discussions on the floor, the idea was to use the term safety management principles more in the general sense, multimodal, and not just Annex 19, which would be aviation. So that's hopefully clarifies why there is a separation here.
Okay, so again, stating that the intention of the paragraph was to reflect the separate discussions in the committee as regards to the requirements for Annex 19, as well as to recognize that safety management principles should be accepted. So is there any further discussion that this should be changed? Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and sorry to speak again then. Then perhaps in 5.42 we should stay instead of may, should be applicable, also to reflect your words just now. Thank you very much.
France?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to support CANSO's proposal. Thank you.
France, can you repeat? Sorry about that.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to support the proposal that CANSO just made. Thank you.
Canada?
Thank you, Chair. By way of compromise to bring these two views together, perhaps to clarify at the beginning of paragraph 5.42, it could start with however, which draws the distinction between the two parts, and it's building on that. And then I would support what Council said with respect to should.
Greece?
I agree with the proposal made by Canada. I had the same proposal to start paragraph 5.42 by however, in order to show the relation between these two paragraphs. and to strike out maybe with and to reward with should be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objections to this proposal? So we start with however, and then we change may be to should be. Okay, thanks. I'm seeing no objection. 5.43. 5.44. 5.45. United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a multi-part intervention here. I believe earlier in the conversations, our friend and colleague from France softened the language. I did not copy that down as I should have. I was wondering if the Secretariat could reread that.
Please give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the paragraph I believe that's being referred to was earlier in 5.11, where it said specifically about the environmental standards, that the operations comply with applicable environmental standards. So that was the text that was agreed to earlier in 5.11. And we can, I think you can see it is consistent with the existing text here under 545. Comply with all applicable environment standards. The difference here is in the word all. So I would say comply with applicable environmental standards. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat, United States.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to propose a slight change to this. We will restate our noted versus agreed, so I'll continue with that frame of thought and rewrite it to say the committee noted for SST operation should comply with applicable environmental standards. So replacing to should and eliminating all. And then we'd also like to, again, voice that we do not feel that this conference is the place to discuss environmental standards in the ICAO mechanism that is best placed to CAPE, where they deal with environmental standards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, United States. So the proposal is that 5.45 should read, the committee noted the need for SST operations, that SST operations should comply with applicable environmental standards. France?
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I would like to retain the word agreed. And I would like to respond to the United States comment to the effect that this conference is not meant to develop environmental standards. That's quite obvious, but it's also obvious that all of the functionalities and operations that we're talking about in this conference have to apply environmental standards because those standards apply to all operations. It's as simple as that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, France. Finland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We fully support the comment just made by France, and we think the text should stay as it was presented, so fully support the formulation of the committee agreed, as we believe that this really reflects the discussions earlier.
Belgium?
Thank you, Chair. Belgium also support the correct reading by the Secretariat and the interventions made by France and Finland about this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to take this. Chris?
I would like to add my voice to the text that is written by Secretariat, because I think that it totally reflects our discussions in this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the sentiments of the committee has expressed earlier and again that they would prefer agreed, so I'm going to, again, but propose the change by the US, so it should say the committee agreed on the need for SSTD operations, that SST operations should comply with applicable environmental standards. Does the committee have any objection to this proposal? Okay, I see none, so 5.45 is amended as proposed. 5.46. 5.47. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to propose in first line where is written digital technologies to strike it out because it limits the new technologies only to digital. It's better to be written of new technologies and leave it generally. Thank you.
Thank you, Greece. Any objections? 5.48. 5.49. 5.50. We now move to 5.51, which are the recommendations. Recommendation 5.5/1. Recommendation A. B. C. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a recommendation in little c, in the first line before the bottom one. We suggest the addition after necessary policies to include environmental aspects. It has already mentioned in the body of the report as we discussed it previously. So it's worthy to be mentioned here, that recommendation too. Thank you.
United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the Assembly Resolution 39-1 Consolidated Statement of Continuing ICAO Policies and Practices related to environmental protection, general provisions, noise, and local air quality contains Greece's concern, so that there's no need to be redundant and place environment in C. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the interpretation of the United States? Belgium?
Thank you, Chair. My reading is that something which has been agreed in the text in the discussion, that this could be also reflected in the recommendation. So the proposal made by Greece of adding after the word policies, including environmental aspects, looks fine for Belgium. Thank you.
One point to consider is that necessary policies means that it applies to all policies. So when you add something, it emphasizes one area over the other. So that in terms of capturing everything, that it reads better and supports the intention as is. So is there any objection to leaving that as based on the clarification from the Secretary? Okay, thank you. I see none. We move to recommendation 5.5/2. A. B. C. and D. United States.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. United States would like to submit a slight change to sub D. Instead of establish a means to facilitate the sharing of information between states on practices relevant, we would like to change that to say, establish a means to facilitate the sharing of information applicable to the interaction between aviation and commercial space transportation. The meaning behind this is the fact that UNOSA also has a remit to conduct the same operation with ICAO being being aviation centric, that it should be based on the interaction between aviation and commercial space transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, United States. Can you just read it again?
Of course. To say that ICAO establish a means to facilitate the sharing of information applicable to the interaction between aviation and commercial space transportation.
Is there any objection from the committee to this? France?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have an objection per se, but I don't understand the intent. As I see it, the intention of little d is kind of like little b, that there be sufficient sharing of practices and operations for commercial space travel. And from what I understand of the U.S. proposal, we would be reducing the capacity for sharing to just between aviation and space travel. And I thought that we were aiming for a global sharing of experience. So I'd like further clarification on that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, France. I believe the United States was trying to broaden, but I'll allow them to clarify. United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do agree with your interpretation, Secretariat, and we do agree in principle with our colleague from France that we do promote sharing of information. The issue here is that we are in currently stated D is that we're giving ICAO the remit to be in charge of ensuring that states are sharing information on commercial space with each other. We can broaden that, as you had previously stated, Mr. Chairman. And we also believe that the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs is also doing strictly commercial space information sharing. So as a conference and committee here, we feel that it's best to do it within the direction of the interaction between aviation and commercial space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the committee happy that the proposed wording would allow for a broader sharing of information and does not restrict sharing? Okay, I'm seeing no objections. Recommendation 5.5/3, standard making processes. ICAO should review and enhance its standard making processes in order to meet the requirements of the rapid pace of technological developments. Any proposal for change? Thank you. I see none. We have completed the draft report on working paper 305, agenda item 5. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we have completed our business for this morning. Lunch will be served, so we ask you to stay around for lunch. I want to thank the committee for the deliberations over the last 9 days. I believe the presentations, both by the Secretariat and states, were excellent. The interventions were excellent. Except for one day, we were able to have all statements that states wanted to make heard. And I thank you for your very efficient and professional deliberations. So enjoy your lunch, and we will see you back tomorrow. Thank you.